What is canon? This is a question that has plagued fictional franchises across multiple forms of media for generations. Whether it be Star Wars, One Piece, or anything in between, the question of canonicity is prevalent almost across the board in fiction, and Naruto is no exception. So in this video, my goal is to give the most in-depth and accurate analysis over what is, isn't, or could be canon to the Naruto series, and how the varying levels of canonicity affect the way we understand the series as a whole. In other words, today we'll be exploring and breaking down Naruto Canon Explained. Before breaking down the tiers of canon, which I'll explain in a bit, I think it's first important to go over A, what canon actually means, B, why establishing an official canon is important, and C, what the basic criteria is for something to fall into the category of canon. As for what canon means in literary fiction, the generally accepted definition is the body of works taking place in a particular fictional world that are generally considered to be official or authoritative, especially but not exclusively those created by the original author, developer, or publisher of the intellectual property. For the second part, establishing an official canon and subsequent tiers of canon authority is massively important for viewers to get the best understanding of the story. Basically, every piece of fiction out there has a self-contradictory piece of material, especially something like Naruto, where we have a massive amount of information on the series. So when contradictions do occur, it's important to have a basis from which we can say one way or another that this is correct and this is incorrect when it comes to interpreting the story. For example, in the fight between Kakashi and Pain, the anime shows Kakashi breaking a Rinnegan rod in half with his hand, while the manga just shows Pain pulling the rod away. This may seem like a tiny, inconsequential detail, but for power scaling purposes, it can be huge. There are also a myriad of timeline inconsistencies, some of which we'll go over later, that can make a gigantic difference in how we understand the story, depending on what level of authority we give certain pieces of Naruto media relative to others. So, as you can see, establishing a canon is vital, not only for power scaling, but also for getting a full and complete understanding of the story at large. For the third part, the basic criteria for Naruto's canon is as follows. Number 1, the material must be published by and or have involvement from Shueisha and or Kishimoto. Number 2, the material must have some level of evidence within the context of the media itself to belong to the canonical timeline. This can be author statements, primary canon sourcing, or other things of the sort. The reason for the first point is simple. The Naruto IP, intellectual property, is co-owned by Kishimoto and the publishing company Shueisha. Therefore, they have equal say in what is or isn't canon. So if Kishimoto and Shueisha agree that something is canon, it's canon. If one side agrees that it's canon, but we don't have confirmation on the other side either way, it's still canon, especially if the other side works on that work in some way, shape, or form. If one side were to claim that something is canon and the other side disagrees, which has never happened with Naruto, but let's just pretend, then we'd have a situation where it would be up to the audience to decide. I personally would say in a case like that, it would be non-canon if there's disagreement from the co-owners of the property, but that's just me. But now that we've covered what canon is, why it's important, and what criterion are used to determine a particular work's canonicity, it's time to dive into our canonicity tiers. These will effectively break down the canon material into 3 sections: primary canon, secondary canon, and tertiary canon, with higher tiers of canon having greater authority than the material that belongs to the tiers below them. We'll go over more as we get into it, but without any further ado, let's dig into Naruto's primary canon. Primary canon, in this case, is any material published by Shueisha explicitly with direct or heavy involvement from Kishimoto with clear intent to be a part of the primary canonical timeline. This is the highest tier of canon because both co-owners of the Naruto IP directly agree on their canonicity and were directly involved in their creation. This primary canon material is broken up into 2 categories. Category 1 is manga canon. The works in this category are exactly what they sound like. They are official Naruto series manga, written or worked on directly by Kishimoto and published by Shueisha. The material in this category is as follows: Naruto Part 1, which makes up chapters 1 through 238, Kakashi Gaiden, which makes up chapters 239 through 244, Naruto Part 2, which makes up chapters 245 through 700, Naruto Gaiden, the Seventh Hokage and the Scarlet Spring, Boruto Naruto Next Generations, including the omake Naruto Gaiden, The Path Lit by the Full Moon, which is essentially chapter 0 of the Boruto manga, Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, and finally, the Minato one-shot manga. Category 2 is the lesser-known, non-serialized one-shots. These are also official Naruto manga written or worked on directly by Kishimoto and published by Shueisha. They were just not serialized into the actual manga itself. Most of them are scattered throughout guides, such as The Revelation of Kakashi's True Face, which was published in the back of Databook 3 and later adapted into the anime. Other titles like this are as follows: At Ichiraku, The New Erotic Ninjutsu Completed, After the Last, The Real True Face, The Beast That Was Shot by Love, Boruto Road to B, The Day Naruto Became Hokage, and finally, Boruto Naruto Next Generations Omake, Kawaki's Darkness, which I could find nothing on, but I know it exists. Because of direct involvement from both Kishimoto and Shueisha, along with being published in or as canon material, these are to serve as the primary canon. Any satirical moments in these one-shots are to be taken as such, but otherwise understood as a genuine part of the primary canon material, which leads me to our next tier, secondary canon. Secondary canon in the case of Naruto is any material that is published by Shueisha and has some level of involvement from Kishimoto, or anything else directly worked on by Kishimoto with clear intent to be a part of the primary Naruto canonical timeline. Works in this tier have authority over the tertiary canon material, but do not take precedence over primary canon material. The reason for this is because although Shueisha did publish these, Kishimoto has less direct involvement with them, so more involvement from both authoritative parties equals more authority and canonicity overall. Therefore, anything from secondary canon that contradicts primary canon is to be taken as an error. Remember, we always side with primary canon unless the authorities over the primary canon tell us otherwise. This tier is broken up into 4 categories. The first is canon novels. All of the novels listed are published by Shueisha and either illustrated, edited, okayed, or a combination of those things by Kishimoto. We have good reason to believe that these are canon for those reasons, along with the fact that all of these novels have made it onto one of Shueisha's canon Naruto novels timelines. One of these was published in V-Jump magazine, which is also owned by Shueisha, and the other one was the official Naruto website, which is authoritative due to the fact that both the Boruto manga and V-Jump magazine both point to it being authoritative. The canon novels are as follows: Dokonjo Ninden, Tales of an Utterly Gutsy Shinobi, Dojunjo Ninden, Tales of an Utterly Pure-Hearted Shinobi. Both of these are just novels written by Jiraiya. They don't actually take place in the story, but they are a part of the story because they're novels that he would have written during the story. Just want to throw that out there. Then we have Itachi Shinden, Book of Bright Light, Itachi Shinden, Book of Dark Night, Sasuke Jinraiden, Kakashi Hiden, Shikamaru Hiden, The Last Naruto the Movie Novelization, Sakura Hiden, Konoha Hiden, Gaara Hiden, Akatsuki Hiden, Sasuke Shinden, Konoha Shinden, Boruto Novels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, Boruto Naruto the Movie Novelization, Naruto Shinden, Parent and Child Day, Sasuke Shinden, Master and Star Pupil, Shikamaru Shinden, Kakashi Retsuden, Sasuke Retsuden, and finally, Naruto Retsuden. Again, all of these are indisputably canon as they have been placed on a canon timeline by Shueisha on authoritative sources, and they are placed between manga chapters, so that just means that these are intended to be a part of the manga canonical timeline. Some people have argued that it might be a separate canonical timeline, but that doesn't make any sense whenever they put it on a timeline with the manga. In addition to that, all of these are a part of the New Era project, which is promoted in the weekly release of chapter 700 of the Naruto manga, so yet another authoritative source does promote these as the continuation of the Naruto story. Next up on this tier, we have data books and guides. This is fairly simple. All of these were published by Shueisha, have some level of involvement or approval from Kishimoto, and/or are promoted as authoritative and source primary canon material while being heavily worked on by trusted editors. These works are as follows: the first data book, second data book, third data books. Yes, there are technically two, not just one, but everything that you'll find has them combined into one. The Naruto 1 Decade 100 Ninja Guide, Naruto 10th Chronicle Mini Guide, the fourth data book, Naruto The Last Movie data book, Boruto Naruto the Movie data book, first fan book, second fan book, Naruto Shinden Book of Wind, Naruto Shinden Book of Lightning, Naruto official website birthday columns, and the Naruto official website Boruto database entries. All of the physical guides and data books are fairly simple to go over since they are worked on directly or indirectly by Kishimoto, but some of you may be asking why exactly the official Naruto website birthday columns and Boruto database entries make the list. Well, that's because these fall into the category that I referred to before, where V-Jump and the Boruto manga explicitly point to these entries as authoritative. Also, they are worked on by the same team of editors that worked on the data books themselves. The editorial company is called Caramel Mama. Now, I know it's weird, but that's literally what it's called, and they're credited in the back of the data books, as you can see here. So, since these database and birthday column entries are worked on by this team and referenced as authoritative by primary canon material exclusively, these clear the barrier of entry into the second canon tier. Next up, we have the canon movies. This is fairly simple. These follow the novels, and Kishimoto and Shueisha both worked on these. Naruto The Last Movie, and then Boruto Naruto Next Generations, the movie. People debate on whether the movies themselves or the novels should hold more authority in terms of canonicity, so I just put them on the same tier because there doesn't seem to be a consensus. There's honestly no reason to need to choose one though, since they're both clearly canon for various reasons and don't actually contradict one another. It's just that the novels expand upon what the movies show us. I will also add the release of the movies and the novels are very, very close to one another, so it seems like they were being worked on at the same time, having involvement from Kishimoto on both sides of the work. And finally, for the secondary canon tier, we have the Boruto anime. This one is hotly debated, but the answer is actually super clear. The creators of the Boruto anime have confirmed that the Boruto anime is canon and that they work closely with Kishimoto to establish an expanded story that's cohesive with the manga. In addition to that, we also have examples of the manga directly referencing anime-only arcs, lending credence to the idea that they exist in the same canonical timeline. Some will point out various inconsistencies, such as Sarada having the 3-tomo Sharingan against Boro in one and then the 2-tomo in the other, but what do we do when we have contradictory points in different tiers of canon? That's right, we side with the higher tier of canon. Since the higher tier of canon also happens to be the primary canon, being the Boruto manga, the answer is clear. An inconsistency with a lower canon is not uncommon and not a big deal. A case like this is simple. Side with the primary canon and move on. But now we move on to the final and lowest tier of canon, Tertiary Canon. Tertiary canon, in the case of Naruto, is anything else that may have involvement from Kishimoto and Shueisha, but isn't explicitly stated, shown, or implied to be a part of the primary canonical timeline. Material in this category is somewhat questionable in terms of the level of canonicity, but can be argued for to some degree. It certainly shouldn't usurp anything claimed in the higher tiers of canon, but anything that's not directly contradictory to the higher canon tiers is fair to use as supplementary material. First up in this tier, we have a few guides. The anime profile guides 1 through 3, and the Naruto Road to Ninja guide. Now, the anime profile guides 1 through 3 are just that, anime profile guides. They do reference mostly material from the manga as well as from the data books, such as the Sword of the Thunder God, the awesome blade created by Tobirama, which is featured in the anime, and the 1 Decade 100 Ninja guide. And they're worked on by a lot of the same editors who do work on higher canon material. However, Kishimoto's involvement isn't really clear, and we don't know how much this relates back to the primary canon, as it could just be covering the anime since it is an anime profile guide, and we know that the anime does tend to would deviate from the manga. So while you can take these as supplementary material, I'd be hard-pressed to say that they should be any higher on this list in terms of canonicity. The Road to Ninja Guide is one that I didn't know about until recently, and most people don't know about, but it is super interesting because Kishimoto did directly work on it. But the movie that it references is an alternate timeline, so I'm not sure that we can really pull anything from it and just establish it as canon. However, since Kishimoto did in fact work on it, maybe you could argue that it's canon to the larger Naruto multiverse, but not the main canonical timeline. Next up, we have the movie, Road to Ninja, but the same thing applies here. Kishimoto worked on it, but it's super unclear if we can actually derive anything from this as being canon to the main timeline, because it's a part of a separate timeline. Next up, we have the Naruto anime, specifically the canon episodes. This only goes for the episodes that are explicitly following the Naruto manga, but it may be fair to use some of the extended stuff as supplementary. For example, Kishimoto was dealing with major health issues while writing the manga for Kakuzu and Hidan's arc, and has expressed that he wishes he could have fleshed it out more. We then see that Kakuzu's hearts can fly in the manga during the war arc like they did in the anime, but not in the original manga, so you could probably argue that the extended scenes from that arc in the anime where they do fly are fair use. However, anything that directly contradicts the manga or any of the other higher tiers of canon should not be used in my opinion. And finally, we have the games, specifically the cutscenes, potentially, from Naruto Storm Generations and Naruto Storm Revolution, as well as the combat and some of the designs from the Naruto Storm series as a whole. In one way or another, these are all stated to be canon for different reasons, whether it be the Generations or Revolution cutscenes, or the movesets provided in the Storm games. However, this is to be taken with a grain of salt. In terms of the Generations and Revolution cutscenes, they are stated to be canon to the Naruto anime, but not to the Naruto manga, since we know that large swaths of the anime are non-canon, and the Generations and Revolution cutscenes themselves do contradict the higher tiers of canon on multiple occasions. It's fair to say that these are to be looked at with a skeptical eye, and no offense to the dude at CyberConnect who made these claims, but he doesn't get to make those decisions. However, the reason I have the Storm series combat and movesets on here is that it's stated that Kishimoto works directly with the Storm team on the movesets for characters, so I do think it's fair to say that some of the abilities the characters have in-game are fair to take as canon, including some of the crazy displays of power that we see. However, this doesn't apply to all the movesets. For example, while it's stated for Storm 4 that Kishimoto did design the perfect Susanoo for Shisui, the developers state that they considered what deceased characters could have had if they lived longer. So in the case of Shisui, I think giving him the perfect Susanoo is not fair at all, since that could be applied to the category of if he lived longer and certain things happened, this is what his perfect Susanoo would have looked like. Same goes for Itachi's perfect Susanoo. I do think though that giving Shisui a lower form of Susanoo is fair based on the popularity poll sketch by Kishimoto, paired with the fact that Itachi does state he awoke the Susanoo right after getting MS in both eyes, but that's a side note. A good example of a move that I do think would be reasonable to claim is canon is Kakashi's Twin Lightning Shiver, or the Iron Sand Clay Dragon combo from Sasori and Deidara. These would apply to forms of them that had existed in the main timeline, and they're things that they could reasonably pull off. Well, that about does it for the tiers of canon. I think that we did a good job of explaining each tier, justifying each work within the tiers, and giving necessary examples to break them down effectively. I do want to add two more things before we go though. Number one, this should go without saying, but I have to say it a lot in my comments, so I'm going to say it here. The anime filler is non-canon. The other movies outside of the movies listed here are also not canon. Anything that is outside of what is listed here is explicitly non-canon, or at the very least, we have no evidence to suggest that it should be. And number two, the last thing I'd like to do is give a quick example of how to effectively use these tiers by covering a contradiction that I myself am very passionate about, Kakashi's and Obito's ages. Trust me, I think this exercise will be super helpful. So here's the issue. Kakashi and Obito in the 4th databook are stated to be the same age during the war arc. However, Kakashi is stated to have graduated at 5 and become a Chunin at 6, while Obito graduated at 9 and became a Chunin at 11. This would be fine if we didn't see Kakashi and Obito enter the academy, join Team Minato, and most importantly, take the Chunin exams together in the manga. If Kakashi and Obito are the same age, but Kakashi became a Chunin at 6, that would mean that Obito was in the Chunin exams 3 years before he even graduated from the academy. Big contradiction. So what do? Let's take a look at all the information we have on the topic in each tier of canon. In the primary canon, we have Kakashi and Obito entering the academy at the same time in the manga, Kakashi and Obito joining Team Minato together in the manga, Kakashi and Obito taking the Chunin exams together in the manga, and Kakashi being stated to have become a Chunin at 6 in the manga. In the secondary canon material, Kakashi is stated to be a Genin at 5 and a Chunin at 6 in the databooks, Obito is stated to be a Genin at 9 and a Chunin at 11 in the databooks, Kakashi and Obito are stated to be the same age in the war in the databooks, Kakashi is stated to be the youngest graduate ever in Itachi Shinden, Kakashi is stated to be a Genin at 5 and a Chunin at 6 in the Naruto website birthday columns. And finally, in the tertiary canon, we have a statement about Kakashi becoming a Chunin at 6 in the Naruto anime. I forgot to put this in initially, but there's also a statement in the fan books putting Kakashi at 6 as a Chunin, so there's that as well. So what do we see? The overwhelming evidence shows us that Kakashi is intended to have been a Chunin at 6 and the youngest graduate ever at 5 in all of Naruto media. Kakashi and Obito also enter the academy, join Team Minato, and take the Chunin exams together in the primary canon. These things would be impossible if their graduation, promotion, and adult ages are what they are listed as in the databooks. Because the primary canon does not contradict itself here, and the only thing in the secondary canon that throws a wrench in the mix is their adult ages being the same, the most consistent way to fix this inconsistency while preserving the primary canon material is to say, Obito's adult age is an error, he must be about 4 years older than Kakashi, as opposed to the same age as him. This is totally fine because Kishimoto does have a ton of help with the databooks, so it's not something that he 100% wrote, but he does write the manga himself, hence the reason the databooks are a lower tier in terms of canonicity than the manga in the canon hierarchy, so it can be easily explained as an editor or contributor error. I do see a possibility where Kishimoto just left the ages and stuff to somebody that was helping him to put it together, as opposed to writing each individual age himself, whereas we do know that Kakashi's Chunin age is supposed to be 6 years old, and we see him take the Chunin exams with Obito. This solution would allow for Obito's graduation and Chunin promotion ages to remain intact, along with everything else on this topic in the secondary, tertiary, and more importantly, the primary canon. This would also mean Kakashi becomes a Jonin at about 9 or 10 years old, which is supported by the aforementioned birthday column stating that he became a Jonin, quote, a few years after making Chunin, and lines up with Minato's statement about Sakumo dying 5 years prior to Kanabi Bridge, since Obito didn't know about it, despite joining Kakashi's team with him when Kakashi was 5 years old. This Jonin age also supports his Anbu age, since he becomes an Anbu member at 12 in secondary canon, after Minato becomes Hokage, which happens after the Third War is over, which is after Rin's death. The fact that Obito's hair grew from short to shoulder length would also indicate a passage of time of 1.5 to 2 years between being crushed by the boulder and Rin's death, so even that is consistent. This also makes Obito 17 to 18 during his battle with Minato, which makes a lot more sense than him being 14 years old, like most people think. This is just one example of how using this canonicity tiering system can help us to understand the story better and correct any inconsistencies in the material while preserving the primary canon, which should always be the goal. So again, this is why the tiers of canon authority are important. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed or learned something, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out when new content drops. You'll definitely want to listen to that last part this time, because next week I'll be delivering yet another video that nobody else has ever done before. Naruto's Geography Explained. Hope you're looking forward to it as much as I am, and from the poll results I put up a few weeks ago, I think you guys are. I think it's going to be sick, and I can't wait for you guys to see it, but for those of you who made it this far, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end, and until next time, have an awesome day.